Hey, I'm Obi. That's Ed, and we are Drinking from the Garden Hose, your favorite podcast. Find us wherever you get your favorite podcast. We're the places that all the good podcasts are at. And remember, subscribe, like, leave us comments. We love your feedback. It helps to fuel our show, give us great things to talk about. Ed, how are you?
Doing great. Got some feedback from our special episode, Obi.
What did they have to say about Anthony?
Well, I mean, of course, he's the star. I had a lot of people telling me that we should have him on more often if we want to get listeners. I do know that people listen that don't normally listen. So no one noticed you weren't part of the podcast. I'm not sure if people noticed I was part of the podcast. It was all about Anthony. That was the feedback I got.
That's good, but I imagine, or correct me if I'm wrong, those people might have special interest in Anthony, those new listeners.
Oh, I'm quite sure that they listened just for him. I don't think they were listening for the cruise tips. I think they were listening just to hear what Anthony had to say.
Well, good. Well, hopefully they'll decide to listen to hear what you have to say and hear how you express yourself, especially how you're like your father. How are you like your parents? Ed? We're getting old. We're becoming our parents. What similarities have you noticed?
Well, my dad doesn't have a podcast, but as you get older, you get cranky. My dad's cranky, grumpy, and I'm cranky and grumpy. That's the most obvious thing. Just the crankiness and the grumpiness is the most obvious thing.
Well, I'm not as cranky. No, I should say the other way around. My father's probably slightly more cranky than me, but neither of us are particularly cranky. As you know, I'm not here for you to be cranky too and absorb your angst. But my father likes to ask a lot of questions. Like he won't always give his opinion. You think you're having a conversation with my father, and then you go back and you go, I told him all my stuff, but he didn't tell me anything. I think a lot of times in our podcast that can be the same, where I'm just like, so Ed, what do you think? And you go off and I go, so really, that's what you think? And then I come back and listen and go, I didn't say anything. I just goaded Ed.
So you think you're becoming your dad in real life or just on the podcast?
I think that one particularly in the podcast, but maybe a little bit in real life there. The way I'm totally like my dad in real life now is I like to throw things out. I mean, everything. It's like, why do we have this? Just declutter all the time. My mother had a coffee maker on the kitchen counter. You know where a coffee maker is supposed to be?
Sure.
My father decided it was cluttering up his kitchen counter and he hid it. He hid it and just put it away somewhere. And maybe, and those are the kind of things like I'm starting to do, like, really? We don't need this anymore. And I'll just get rid of it. We have 4 people living here. We don't need 8 plates. I hide the other 4 plates so that they don't clutter up my house. That's how I'm really becoming my father.
All right. I think, another way I'm getting like my father is, one thing I always remember growing up, like if we were ever going somewhere, like on a trip, like we had to be ready early, packed like the day before, all planned out. And I'm the same way. Like I lose my freaking mind when my kids aren't packed or my wife isn't packed. And we got to leave. If we got to leave at 7 a.m. to get where we got to go, and as soon as it hits 6:50, I'm probably already nervous because I already can tell we're not going to be on time leaving at 7, right? And as soon as it gets to 7, now I'm really anxious. And then, inevitably when we leave at 7:15, first thing out of my mouth when we're all in the car is, we're going to be late and it's all your fault. And we haven't even left yet. So I think I definitely got that from my dad, without a doubt, that I have no patience. I get very antsy and I got to be early to things.
He trained you on that and you picked it up right away.
I don't know if he trained me or if it's just like a genetic trait with the anxiety that comes with it. I'm not really sure, but that is definitely something that is just like my father.
I can't remember names, which is funny. When I was young, we would go places and my father would spend the first 5-10 minutes asking my mother, who's that? What's that one's name? And now I realize, and I used to know all the answers to those questions. And now I'm like, I don't know. Who are those people? What do they do? Why are they here? How? And now that's me asking my wife, who's that? What's that one's name? I've become that person who can't remember a single person's name ever. Work home, any place. Cannot do it.
All right, Ovi, how about this? Like, you knew me when I was a lot younger. I used to talk all the time. I talk a lot on this podcast. But in real life now, when I'm hanging out with family, I don't talk at all. I just mind my own business. I don't talk. Unless I've had a few drinks. Then I'm probably, I'm nonstop. And that's my dad. If you were to hang out with my dad and he's not drinking, you're never gonna even know what his voice sounds like. If he's drinking, as his grandkids call him, Fun Grandpa comes out and he doesn't shut up.
Fun grandpa. No, no. So I'm going to go the opposite way. In a way, I'm not like my dad, but my brother has turned into my dad. So my dad is a early to bed, early up type of guy. Like 10 o'clock goes to bed. 4 o'clock he wakes up still. He's retired. He's still up at 4 o'clock in the morning. My brother is turning the same way. And so if we're having a family gathering, it gets 9:30, 10. The two of them out on the couch, just out. And it's noisy. And they're out cold. That's not me, but that's the way my brother's totally becoming just like my father. We even call him grandpa when he starts doing things. And Josh's grandpa again.
Nice. And I don't know if you feel like you're looking like your dad, but now that I spend a lot of time on Zoom, I spend a lot of time looking at myself more than I ever did before in my life. And there are moments almost every day that I'm on a Zoom call and I look at myself and go, holy shit, I'm my dad.
So I always looked like my mother. And then I lost a lot of weight, as you're aware. But I was even smaller than I am now. I was at my absolute lowest. I was clean shaven. I walked into the bathroom and there was my father staring at me. And that's why I've stuck with facial hair ever since. Just like it was shocking. I was like, why is dad in the bathroom with me? Because I've never looked like my father. I've always thought I looked like my mom, and I look just like him. So yeah, I'm even starting to look like him. But
There might be a reason. There might be a reason why I have facial hair too, because my father doesn't have it. So obviously that does differentiate us. But I will tell you this: it's the weird thing about the guys because growing up, I remember people telling me like, take a good look at your girlfriend's mom, or take a good look at the girl you have the hots for in high school. Check her mom out because that's what she's gonna look like. And I remember always like kind of laughing about that. Like, no way. That first of all, I couldn't envision it, right? Because the girl you had the hots for in high school, her mom was like in her 40s, right? So that didn't look like an old lady. It looked like 40s, right?
right.
But I kid you. I mean, come on, you know this, right? Women turn into their freaking moms. There's no doubt about that. I mean, spitting images. So that statement about take a look at the girl's mom, I mean, that's the best advice any person can give a young man because she's going to look like her mom no matter what.
Yeah, but they should tell the women the same thing. Like, take a look at.
Well, that's the joke in our house. Like my mom always says that to my wife. Like, I told you, I told you he was going to end up like Jerry. And sure enough, I did. But my wife is a spitting image of her mother. And it's, so much so that if you look at pictures of her mother through life, like now you can see my wife as she's gone through life at the same milestones. Like you don't know, other than the black and white, right? For her mom, the pictures, like you're like, oh my God, it's the same person. It's crazy.
My wife has moments where she looks just like her mother, but not overall. There's just enough of her father to make him different. But it's my mother-in-law is one of 7 sisters. So there's always somebody that she looks like at any given time. Like it may not be her mother, but she might look like somebody else at that point in time. So it's even weirder because there's a whole group of aunts that I gotta look at to figure out what she looked like or what she's gonna look like in the future.
Yeah, I'm a terrible person. If you've been listening to this podcast, you know that I got some interesting ideas and I say some things. But there's there's a girl that lives on the block, high school girl, very popular, and she's in the same grade as my daughter. I tell my daughter all the time. I say all these boys that are chasing that girl, their dads never told them to look at the girl's mom because they wouldn't be chasing no more. I know I'm terrible. I've said that to my daughter. My daughter says I'm terrible for saying it and thinking it. But come on, it's a fact.
No, you know what? This is my guess. Bam looks at you, goes, "You're a horrible dad." She goes, "I hope he's right. I hope he's right."
I mean,
So
if she
get
was
hers.
smart, if she was smart, what she would be saying is, "Thank God I got my mom."
Yeah, but that girl's father probably says the same thing.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
Wow. Wow. I hope she doesn't listen to the podcast.
Well, if my house gets torched anytime in the next 2 weeks, we know why and we know who did it.
Yes, we have we have a suspect.
Yes. If the cops are worth their weight in gold, they'll catch the person.
Speaking of a woman growing up to look like her mother, I know you wanted to talk about the Super Bowl and what Rihanna's baby was going to look like. Is that what you wanted to discuss about our Super Bowl?
I didn't want to talk about Rihanna at the Super Bowl, although that's part of it, right? So I did want to talk about the Super Bowl though, because as we get older, like our Super Bowl, so I'm not even going to talk about the game. That's not what this is about. This is about my Super Bowl experience, right? It's about that. I woke up this past Monday morning, normal time, got out of bed, was able to function, walk the dog, felt great. And as I'm walking the dog, I'm thinking to myself, man, I used to have to take like half days of work from work on the Monday after Super Bowl because I'd party too hard. I remember thinking, when I was sitting in my house on Sunday night, by myself or with my family, taking it very easy, that and just ready for the game. Like that's what it wasn't like 22 years ago, 30 years ago, when it was all about the party. And I remember the Giants when they beat the Bills with that wide right. I vaguely remember wide right, but I don't remember anything that happened in that game. I was in college and it was a big party, just an excuse to drink. And so I just think life comes at you fast. And now all of a sudden I'm that old guy who's like, yeah, I'm gonna get up tomorrow and go to work. Like it's no big deal. It's just a game. But so that's the observation I had. But then just the people with all the opinions on the commercials and on Rihanna, like it was the greatest halftime show ever. It sucked. And then you look at the people who are telling you it sucked. They're all freaking older than me. It's like it's amazing how Americans look at this stuff and all have an opinion, but it's based on when you grew up and how old you are, I think.
So before we get to the opinions about Rihanna, yes, everything you said about the party is true. And even like the stages, there was, like you said, when you were in college, even if it was your team playing, you barely could watch the game. Slowly but surely, you become more and more watching, less and less partying, more and more watching, and less, and then all of a sudden you have kids. And then you watch half the game at the party, and then the kids want to go home because they're too tired. They got to go to bed. Then you're watching the second half of the game at home, so you miss halftime anyway, for the most part, because you're traveling. And then you wake up, and the bands are like, wait a second, these bands, like Rihanna is like, it's weird the halftime shows now because these are people who are popular, but they're already past their prime of popular, and yet we're not even popular until I had kids, right? Like Rihanna, great big amount of work she's done, but she's like came out of retirement to do this thing. So even like I was an adult for her entire career, and then she retired and came out of retirement. So it's like, wow, I am old watching this game. Like you said, I didn't even watch this game on my hanging out watching couch. I watched, like, I have one TV downstairs, it's a nicer TV. And when I'm hanging out watching something, I watch it there. But I'm like, this game's gonna end so late. I'm just gonna be in bed already. I went upstairs and watched it. Like I was like,
Yeah.
I just want to go right to sleep after the game. Like I want to be prepared.
Yeah, you're definitely older than me then, obviously, because I at least watch the game where I normally watch it. But yeah, I mean, Obi, you're right. Like I threw a party a couple years ago at my and again my transition in life is this party I threw a couple years ago was my daughter's, like we had a couple couples come over. Like there was like 4 people, 6 people that came over and a couple kids. It's not a real party. But I remember thinking to myself as they stayed for the game, how pissed off I was that they stayed for the game. I thought maybe they were old like me and knew that like when the game started, they had to get the hell out of my house. Like, I really only invited them over to eat and drink before the game, and once the game started, I didn't want anything to do with them. And they didn't know their place, and they stayed the whole freaking time. And the whole time, I was like, "When are you getting out of my goddamn house?"
My favorite Super Bowl, given our age, was a few years ago when the San Francisco game had the blackout and the game stopped.
Oh yeah, against the Ravens.
That was perfect. Like, that was like, oh, we can leave now. We didn't miss any of the halftime show. Like, we stayed, and everyone left at that point to go home and watch the game. We'll watch the conclusion at home because now there's a break. Who cares? Even the commercials aren't the good commercials anymore. Like, it was perfect. They should have a second break like that every Super Bowl. It's like, we're just going to stop the game randomly. Everyone can go home.
Well, so that's the other problem with the Super Bowl, right? Because the commercials, and I'm going to get into that in a second, the halftime show, like I don't even know when you're allowed to take a piss anymore because from the moment the game starts to the moment the game ends, you really can't take your eyes off the TV because you might miss something. You might miss, Janet Jackson's nipple. You might miss, one of the best commercials ever. But I will say this. I don't think we're missing any of the best commercials ever.
So here's what I have noticed about the commercials over the last few years. I don't know really. I think this year matched, but I noticed it a lot last year. Commercials during the Super Bowl used to be, I feel, very creative heavy. Like, I think of the Budweiser with the frogs commercial. Like, that was just like, what are these frogs doing? And next thing you know, they finished Budweiser, right? Now it feels like, and maybe somebody who really studies these things would comment and tell me I'm wrong and cranky, but every commercial needs to have a star, like an A-list actor in the commercial. Like, every commercial is an A-list actor. We're not going to be creative. We're going to sell you on the fame of the person who we're watching it. Like, and it doesn't even have to make sense. Like, Serena Williams is in 2 commercials, but one of the commercials she's in there, like, hyping up a team. I love Serena. I will go to take, I can defend Serena is the GOAT of all GOATs, but Serena is an individual sports person. And here she is hyping up team. It was just like, that's not even her niche. Like, it made no sense, but it had Serena, so we'll make it a commercial.
Yeah, you had John Travolta singing. You had Bradley Cooper in the dumbest commercial of all time, by the way, with his mom. It just was stupid. They just shoehorn that in there. But, like, some of the best commercials, and I know some of the best commercials are Apple, right? Whatever. Let's get beyond that stuff. But you talked about the Budweiser frog. I loved Bud Bowl. I I wanted to know. I got pissed when they stopped showing the Bud Bowl. I actually loved watching those bottles play football. I love Bud Bowl. Bud Bowl was the greatest thing ever. But think about Budweiser, what they've done over the years. Remember the What's Up guys? Those guys weren't famous, but people are, I mean, granted, we were young, dumb, and stupid in college at the time, or high school, and we were running around for like 3 months afterwards. What's up? But that's iconic.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I know Mean Joe Green in the Coca-Cola commercial. He was a famous guy who did it. But you're right. Those 3 Budweiser ads, not to mention the horse kicking the field goal. Like, those are all like the creative teams got together and did some work and made really cool commercials. And now it just feels like, well, if we're going to spend $7 million, let's spend another $10 million to have Bradley Cooper and his mother in the commercial. Or Will Ferrell. I know he was in the commercial. I couldn't even tell you.
Yeah, he was getting eaten by zombies. So here's the thing. Here's the thing about the commercials. For the most part, the next day, I forgot all about them. I actually had to look commercials up for this podcast because I had to remember. Like, I was completely blank. Like, what are these commercials even about? But I do remember that the beginning of the Super Bowl, I thought, had the best commercials, and it's because they're all Gen X inspired, right? You had the Clueless commercial,
okay,
right? The Alicia Silverstone. You had the Sylvester Stallone with the Paramount thing. You had, I think my favorite commercial, believe it or not, and it didn't rank high. According to USA Today, it ranked, where did it rank? In the middle, right? But my favorite was the Dunkin' Donuts with Ben Affleck.
That was cute.
Granted, he's a star, but it just had that extra bit when J-Lo showed up. Said, hey, wait a second. Is this what you do when you say you're going to work? I thought that was funny. You know?
That was funny because you needed a married couple that everyone knew was married to make that commercial work, right? So they used the stars in a way that was proper. We're like, I don't care. No offense, I don't know you, Bradley Cooper's mom. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if you wanted to do somebody's mother, this would have been the Kelsey Bowl. Put the Kelsey brothers in the commercial with their mother. Like, I don't know who she is.
The other one I thought was really good was the rock star one. That you're not a rock star, I'm a rock star. Like, but we call everybody rock stars at work. I like that one with Kiss and Ozzy. Just because I do call people rock stars at work, so
Right.
I thought that was good.
That was Workday.
And then I think the other one, this is crazy, especially for people who know me. One of the other ones I actually liked was one of the Jesus commercials, and it was the one about being childlike. And there's a moment in there that one kid was standing on another kid's back so he could piss in the urinal, and I just found that. I mean, I know that's not what the whole freaking commercial was getting at, right? But I just found it hilarious that some kid would let another kid like pee basically on top of him. Like, that's not going to end well. And I just thought that was hilarious.
I don't recall that image from the Jesus commercial.
Oh yeah, it was well, there was two Jesus commercials, and the one was everyone was arguing. That's not the one. The other one was about being childlike, and there's some other scenes in it. But it's like surveillance camera footage of this one kid. And that's the other thing. Who the hell are this kid's parents? Like, the one thing I always tell my kids is don't touch the floor in the bath. Like, don't get down on the ground in the bathroom. It's dirty, the floor. This kid gets down on all fours in the bathroom and then lets it next to the urinal. By the way, as a guy, you know that the area around the urinal on the floor, it's some of the nastiest shit in the world. That is dirty. People, okay.
That's why you have to wash your hands in a public bathroom. It's because whatever on the floor underneath the urinal.
I don't even know. Like, I don't know. Like, I go into a bathroom and there's stuff always on the floor around the urinal. And what I always ask myself is, how does it get there? Like, are people like, because the urinal is freaking big. You can't miss if you have a brain and you know what you're doing. You cannot miss the urinal. So I always think to myself, this is what I do when I pee. I'm thinking to myself, is the person who left that mess an asshole? And they just wanted to pee all over the floor. Like, because I think there's people like that. Or were people not raised right and nobody ever taught them how to pee at the urinal and they just missed because they just didn't realize it. But then you always find those guys, right, that always put two hands on the wall. Like, I don't know what the hell they're thinking, but they got two hands on the wall. By the way, you shouldn't do that either because there's usually boogers up there too. But you put two hands on the wall and you let your thing hang. I think you're going to miss if you do that, right? I don't know why people do that. But then this kid gets on all fours right in that area with bare hands. Oh, it had to be in some wet stuff. And then he lets a kid climb on his back and take his pecker out and pee. I don't know. That was too much. And it was a Jesus commercial. I mean, you can't make that stuff up, Obi.
No, you can't. I am regretting having gone to the bathroom at that moment. That is what I'm doing right now. I wish that I had not skipped that time to go to the bathroom.
Well, if you go online, you can just find the He Gets Us Be Childlike commercial, and you will see that image.
I'm going to pass. I'm going to pass.
No, I saw it. You have to see it. Everyone should see that.
I'm a little nauseated right now. And so, no, I'm going to pass.
So, Obi, as we wrap this up, I'm reminded of some of the feedback that I got on our last episode, the one that you weren't part of.
Right.
I thought the best line from that podcast episode, and if you haven't listened to the one on cruising, you should, was when Anthony was telling this is what I thought was the best. When Anthony was telling the story about being on the balcony of the ship and why you shouldn't stand on the chairs on the balcony because if a 40-mile-an-hour gust of wind comes, it can knock you over. And he points out, I don't know why you'd be on the balcony if it was that windy, but if it does blow you over, that's on you. So you shouldn't stand on the chair. So I actually thought that was the best part of the podcast when he basically told you, if you fall overboard, you're an idiot, it's your fault, you're dead. But the best piece that somebody told me was at the end, when I did our tagline of the charms that we suck, he stopped me and goes, no, I don't suck, you do.
Well, I find it interesting that you don't say that to me. I mean, it is a we thing, and it's charming because the charm is that we suck. I'm Obi. That said, we'll see you next time on Drinking from the Garden.